When I have an ensemble where programming over the sea to Skye is appropriate for them, my experience has been that the students are not very comfortable with 6/8 meters. They might have a little bit of it in their book 2 method books. They may or may not have ever played a concert piece in 6/8 before. So 6/8 might be a relatively foreign concept to a lot of these players. We tell our beginners that the top number is the number of beats in the measure and the bottom number is the note that gets the beat. And in this piece, that happens to be correct, but that doesn't always hold true because traditionally 6/8 is compound time, which means that there are 2 beats in the measure and the dotted quarter note gets the beat. So that's not really true when it comes to compound time, and a lot of students are pretty confused about compound time. And on the other side of that coin, if you've got a student that knows about compound time that's looking at this and thinks that you're going in 2 instead of into 6, well, they're going to be done with this piece in about 30 seconds. So that might be even more confusing if they understand the meter. Maybe not, but in any case, getting everybody on the same page is going to take some explaining. The trick is going to be to try to get the kids to understand the rhythm so that you can move on to other things. There's a lot of musicianship and there's a lot of phrasing stuff to work on in here, and you want to spend as little time as possible having your students figure out these rhythms or when to play or the meter. And that's the real trick. How do we do this efficiently? How do we teach them this as quickly as possible so we can move on to that other stuff? And it might take a little bit of time, but there's definitely some strategies on how to reduce the time that it takes to get them comfortable with this meter. Rhythm has an internal component and it also has a physical component. So we have to intellectualize and understand when the beats are taking place, but we also have to do something with our bodies to represent the time in the physical world. So rhythm is connected to the bow, okay? So in this piece, if I have an 1/8 note, the bow's gonna do something different than if I have a dotted quarter note or if I have 3/8 notes tied together. So our rhythm and our bows are connected. I wrote a teaching companion to Over the Sea to Skye, available on teachingorchestra.com. It's actually longer than the concert piece. And you say, well, how can that be? Well, because some of the techniques we have to break down into steps. And so it might only happen for 4 measures in this piece, but it takes us 16 measures to break down the technique so that they can have the technique required and add this component, add this component, add this component. So what's the strategy for teaching rhythm here? Well, first, we work on bowings. And the easiest bowing right now is just to work on the slurs because it gets them to deal with every beat in the measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are some parts in here where the bowings are similar to this. Sometimes they're 16th notes, but if they can get this, they can probably get the 16th notes too. And it tends to be from D to E when this happens. But it's the simplest way to do this. Open string, first finger, open string, first finger, just to get them comfortable moving the bow down for 3 beats, up for 3 beats, and getting the left hand involved. If this is too hard, they can just play dotted quarter notes and just go down 2, 3, up 2, 3, down 2, 3, up 2, 3, and then add the left hand back in. The next concept are the Loré bowings. And Loré can be pretty tricky because for Loré, the bow doesn't stop, okay? We decelerate the bow and accelerate the bow for the second Loré note. The bow never stops. We slow the bow down a little bit and then we accelerate out and give a little bit of extra grip to the string to articulate this next note, but there's no space in between any of this. So this technique, it comes up quite often and it might take time. We also have the concept of quarter note, 1/8 note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going to come up later here in bowing number 4. We have this bowing a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is tricky because we have down 2, up for 1 count, and then down for 3 more counts. So that's, in a total of this, in this measure, it's 5 counts of down bow, 1 count of up bow. So we're going to have to really play heavy on these down bows and play light and quick on the up bows. Tremolos can be pretty difficult just because the counting in a tremolo has to be internal. The bow is rapidly moving back and forth, and so it's it could create a lot of counting errors. A lot of students miscount on the tremolos. Something about that rapid motion turns off their brains. So, getting them to understand tremolos in the simplest way possible that I know of, which is, if we just have them play open D the whole time, how do we know if they're with everybody? So again, just similar to the slurs, what we do is we just have them add the first finger E on a D string. So open D, first finger D, open D, first finger D. Are they changing bows at the same time? One trick that I sometimes use for my students, and this is the only time that I use this trick, well, maybe for trills too, but I don't usually have my students tap their feet, but if they tap their feet, it gets them to do something external. And since our bows are usually the external action, the foot tapping can help provide that external action. Think about how the bands do it. Most of their counting is internal because they don't have bows. They're not really moving. They're moving their fingers a little bit, but they're not really doing anything else. So they tap their feet to externalize the beat. So here, that might be a good strategy. Teaching them the basic rhythms in the meter, in 6, is going to be the easiest way for them to acquire the feel of the meter and to establish the bowing style. Once you get that, then you can move on to other stuff, and it's going to be much simpler. I would start my students by rote, and I would start getting them to count and maybe even verbalize. That might make things easier too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get them to count out loud. I like to simplify. I like to use just the bow and open strings as much as possible just to get them familiar with the rhythms and just to get them very comfortable. And then we can start layering on the technique. Like for instance here, dotted 8/16. This might be a little complicated for your students. Maybe they're not quite too comfortable with the dotted 8s, and definitely not in these triplet forms. So this might take a little bit for them to get. And then once they get that, well, let's complicate it a little bit more. Let's add slurs to it. Okay, they can do that. Awesome. Well, now let's add dynamics, and you can build and layer up your technique. There are definitely some places in Over the Sea to Skye where you can help cue your students in when they might be getting lost, if they're not doing the best job of always internalizing, or maybe some of them can do it, but over there, Timmy in the back, Timmy's never internalizing, so Timmy might really appreciate a cue from you, particularly in the measure 20 area, because Timmy's always going to be in the viola section, and hey, Timmy, all right, change the bows now. Okay, Timmy, hey, change notes now. Open strings, rote teaching, of course, it's not going to be as exciting as doing run-throughs, but if everybody's falling apart and they're missing rhythms all the time, it's just going to be frustrating. So it might take some effort, pay forward with the technique and just get everybody together with the rhythms, and then they're going to have a lot more fun playing it later. In the next video, I'm going to be going over left hand technique. The left hand stuff is fairly easy in Over the Sea to Skye, definitely easier than the right hand, but there are some stuff. There's some shifting, there's some chromatic patterns and stuff like that, and so that's what I'm going to be going over in the next video. Hope to see you then.